In Chapter 5, we turn to the second major conjugation in our study of the Hebrew verb, what is called the imperfect conjugation. The imperfect is accomplished by adding prefixes and sometimes also suffixes to the verbal root. Because the imperfect paradigm is dominated by these prefixes, it is often even called the prefix conjugation. The paradigm, working again from the third person singular forward, is as follows, and this is a second memory paradigm that you must memorize and learn completely. Yiktol, tiktol, tiktol, tiktali, ektol. Yiktalu, tiktolna, tiktalu, tiktolna, niktol. As a gloss, again coming from the root katal, which has the sense of killing, we would have he will kill, she will kill, you masculine singular will kill, you feminine singular will kill, I will kill. And then in the plural, they masculine plural will kill, they feminine plural will kill, you masculine plural will kill, you feminine plural will kill, and then we will kill. Notice that the imperfect, there is always a prefix and sometimes also a suffix added to the verbal form. To do the paradigm again, it is yiktol, tiktol, tiktol, tiktali, ektol. Yiktalu, tiktolna, tiktalu, tiktolna, niktol. This is a paradigm that should be memorized and you should be able to reproduce at any time. You'll notice that unlike the perfect, the imperfect has distinct forms between masculine and feminine in the third person plural. You will also notice that there are sets of forms that are identical. The third feminine singular and second masculine singular forms are both tiktol, and the third feminine plural and second feminine plural forms are both tiktolna. This is the type of ambiguity that in actual reading will almost never be difficult to sort out, because in context it is usually very apparent who the intended subject is. In the Cal imperfect, there are two common theme vowels. There's the theme vowel, remember a theme vowel is the second vowel in the form, that commonly indicates a dynamic verb. And this is the O theme vowel as in our paradigm word yiktol. Verbs that have an A theme vowel will tend to be stative or dynamic. And there are theme vowels even otherwise, something like a tsere, though they are less common. You'll also notice that this theme vowel is not obvious in every form. In the form yiktol, the third masculine singular, the theme vowel is the obvious holum. When this theme vowel is unstressed, however, it will reduce to a vocal schwa. So with the form yiktol, and then the addition of the u to make the third masculine singular form, third masculine plural form, the expected yiktolu reduces to yiktolu, a vocal schwa, because the stress, as in normal Hebrew words, is on the last syllable. You will also occasionally find at the end of the third masculine plural and second masculine plural forms a noon. People almost call it an anomalous noon. You would have yiktolu and in the presence of a noon, yiktaloon. This is called a paragogic noon, and the presence or absence of that noon does not impact either the parsing or the meaning of a verbal form. As we mentioned in Chapter 3, this grammar typically leaves what we call weak consonants, consonants that have some peculiarity that causes them to behave differently than normal consonants, for the second half of the book. While that is true, there are two peculiarities with which you are already familiar that will impact the formation of the cal imperfect. The first of these is the assimilation of noon. Recall from chapter 2 that if no vowel intervenes, a noon will assimilate to the following consonant. Therefore, a verb which begins with a noon as its first root letter will often not show that letter in the written form, because in the imperfect it will have assimilated. The imperfect for Natan, you would expect, from what you know, would be yin, tain. However, this form does not actually occur. Because of the assimilation of noon, and because the schwa under the noon is silent, this form will undergo an assimilation. Instead of yin-tain, we will find yitain. Note as well what has happened to the dagesh. The dagesh in the hypothetical form is a dagesh lene, indicating a stop pronunciation. Now that the noon has assimilated, the dagesh in the actual form is a dagesh forte, indicating the assimilation of noon. Similarly, in the first common plural, the expected form nin-tain does not occur because the second noon assimilates to the tav, creating nitain. The noon that is visible then is the noon of the prefix, not the noon of the verbal root. Second, recall that gutturals do not take a simple vocal schwa except for rare cases. That gutturals instead tend to prefer a compound schwa. In any root then that begins with a guttural letter, you will have cases in the imperfect where the first root letter shows a compound schwa. The verb amad from chapter 3 with a prefix would become not yamod, but in fact the guttural resists the simple schwa, and the form we get is ya-amod. To this observation we should add the following. Gutturals tend to prefer A-class vowels, and this preference for an A-class vowel can become so strong, in fact, that it can influence the preceding vowel. You will rarely find something like y-amod, if ever. Simply by the nature of speaking, it's much easier to keep your voice and your throat and all the instruments that our bodies use to make sound in approximately the same spot. It is much easier to say ya-amod, not y-amod. And for that reason, the A preference of a guttural vowel will often even influence the preceding vowel, creating an A-class vowel through the beginning of the word in the imperfect. When you parse an imperfect verb, you follow the exact same parsing order given in chapter 3. The conjugation is not a new parsing, but simply a second option for the second element of parsing. We parse in the order verbal stem, conjugation, person, gender, number, root, and gloss. At this point in your study, you still have only one option for the verbal stem, cal, but you now have two options for the conjugation, either a perfect or an imperfect. For instance, tiktali would be parsed as a cal imperfect second feminine singular from the root katal, and glossed as you feminine singular will kill. Notice in comparison to the paradigm that we have both a prefixed t and a suffixed yod. The combination of those two helps us see that this is a second feminine singular form. Regarding the imperfect, there are also two irregularities that should be noted. In the scheme of things, Hebrew actually has relatively few truly irregular words. But in almost every language, irregularities tend to hold on in very common words. If you think about English, we typically have more variability in the verb to be. I am, you are, he, she, it is. We are, you are, they are, compared to a more standard word where we do not have the same amount of variability. I love, you love, he, she, it loves. We love, you love, they love. Notice that the more common word, to be, had more variability between the forms in the English paradigm than the somewhat less common word, though still very common, to love. The reason for this is that speakers of a language are almost always trying to regularize it. And in cases that are not super common, over time, the regular formation of the word will take over more and more. In the most common words, however, irregularities will hang on for a longer time. In Hebrew, two such are halak first, the verb glossed as to go or walk. In the imperfect, the verb halak will lose its first root letter. The hey will disappear. In response to the loss of that hey, the vowel under the prefix will undergo a compensatory lengthening. It will lengthen from the short hirek to the longer vowel tsere. It's also common that the second vowel, the theme vowel, will become a tsere as well. So instead of what you would expect, something like ye lok, we in fact have the forms of the paradigm of halak as ye lake, te lake, te lake, te laki, a lake, ye laku, te lakna, te laku, te lakna, ne lake. You do not need to memorize this paradigm and reproduce it, but you should be able to parse any of these forms when they occur, as they are very common in the text of the Hebrew Bible. Second, in the common verb lakak, glossed as to take, the lamed of lakak in the imperfect acts as a noon in the sense that it assimilates into the following consonant. It is not always the case, but it is common that that assimilation will then be indicated by a dagesh forte. So you would expect a form yilkach. Notice that the patak is due to the presence of a guttural, which often therefore causes an A sound vowel. But with the assimilation of the lamed, the form we get is yikach, the lamed being indicated by the dagesh forte in the kof. Similarly, the paradigm would continue tikach, tikach, etc.